as to replace our lieutenant. And the first question he asked him, when do I get promoted? Well, Captain Evans told him, well, we'll just see how you work out, and then we'll talk about your promotion. Well, okay, on this particular day, he's the guy that's running the 2nd platoon, my platoon. And I'm the radio guy, so he communicates through me to everybody else. All right, we're fighting every day, and the Germans never quit. You would win your objective one day, 10 miles down the road, they set up a whole new defense line. We had to fight them clear through Germany. Well, this is one day where our commanders did a smart thing. Right as the river turns, goes like this, the Germans had set up a defense line right behind it, all the way from the hills on this side to the hills on this side. They had a good one. I mean, they had foxholes, they had tank guns, they were set. But somehow or another, our reconnaissance had seen all that. He said, you're not going to hit that one straight on. You're going to go up this mountain. We got up here to the top, and then we went down like this. We're going to come in like, and this whole slope, the north side of that mountain, was covered with a planted forest. So they were all in rows. Well, this one, the trees hadn't grown, they were only about that big around. But both the half tracks and the tanks should just pop them over. So as we came down off this thing, we're coming above and behind the German lines. It was all over in 10 minutes. It's just like shooting fish in a barrel. So, okay. The Germans jumped and ran. Well, the orders were, get back to your vehicle, get to the town before they get themselves stabilized there. There was a bridge that took us into town. Well, by the time my platoon got there, at least half of the whole task force was already in town. They're already fighting. And what had happened is they burst across this thing. They just kind of splayed out. When we came across this bridge, there was a colonel, Bert Colonel, you know, the eagle on his helmet, standing right there in the corner. He stopped us. And he yelled up at our platoon, boy, the noise was really something. You got tanks firing, you got machine gun, oh man. And he said, don't get involved in all this fighting right here. He said, go to the east side of town and set up a defense line. But Clark, our driver, liked to drive with his foot flat on the floor. So, boy, we really tore through that town. And we're talking typical German town here with cobblestone streets. We got to the edge of the town and it ended abruptly. And there was just this one house, which was really more than a house. It was a house and a compound and a barn. And now what we should have done, we should have stopped right there and put the half-track snug up against the building, left one guy on the 50 caliber machine guns, because that's a very authoritative weapon. I mean, leave one guy on this and the rest of us spread out a little thing. The only trouble is we'd been in combat now steadily without much in the way of reinforcement. We were steadily losing men and not enough replacements. So our squads are getting thinner and thinner. And the day this happened, there were only 3 of us riflemen in back, and there should have been 9. So, well, the trouble with, the rest of the platoon had lost us. Clark ran off and left them, and they took a wrong turn back here, and they're gone. Well, instead of stopping at this first house and setting up this thing, the lieutenant had us roar out along the road and then at the cow pasture out here and park underneath a tree. Well, a little bit farther on down the road, a creek came down out of the hill and ran under a little bridge there. And some of the Germans that had been flushed out of town had gone to this creek and were down behind the bank of it. So when we, one lone vehicle, were out here standing motionless, they noticed us. And they began to shoot at us, and blang, you know, off the side of the half-track and all. And we're doing this senseless thing of returning fire. You're not accomplishing anything, and eventually you're going to lose. You can't really, they would pop up, take a shot, and duck their head back down, but we're right there. They know where we are. And I knew it. Clark knew it. These 2 guys, the other 2 guys were replacements, they didn't know it. They're just scared and they're shooting. So you're trying to make them keep their head down. The lieutenant says to me, Wood, get on the radio and find out where the rest of them are. I've got on the radio. Nobody's answering the phone. Nothing. So I said, sir, nobody's answering the thing. And he says, I'll go find them. He jumps out of the half track. Well, now you got to give him what we call covering fire. You got to really shoot so that they don't take deliberate aim and kill him. So that's what we did. We shot him up. Every time they poked their head up, we let him have it. And he gets back into town. So he's gone. The squad leader, who was a replacement also, he said, what do you hear from the lieutenant? I said, nobody is on the radio. And he says, I'll go find him.
No.
And out he goes again with the routine. That leaves me, PFC Wood, in command of the lead unit of the entire United States 7th Army. I'm it. And so we're still doing this thing. Some of the bullets are banging off the side, and some are whizzing overhead. Except bullets, when they're really close, don't whiz. They're cracked. And one of them clipped off a little limb that fell into the half track, and I looked up, and the guy that was shooting was rapid fire, and the bullets were too big to be shooting. It's 20 millimeter. 20 millimeter would punch right through our half track. I panicked. I kicked the back of the driver's seat. I said, Clark, that's 20 millimeter that they got going over us here. Get us out of here. The driver has windshield up here, but we had steel shields that you let down when you're in combat. And then you only got this to see through. He didn't take time to turn around. He just went blind back there. And he's trying to judge where he is while looking through this as we're doing. Well, strangely enough, he hit the road and he got on it and he didn't do too badly. And we got back even with this house that we had passed, going out there. We hit one of those wagons, splintered it, crawled up on the wreckage of it partly. And it's a big, heavy beamed wagon. And some of it must have gotten in our tread back here in this track part. And when he would gun it, all the thing would do was just kind of jump up and down. We're caught. At about that time, that German gunner realized he's shooting high. He lowered his sights and I felt the first one hit down below my seat. Right? I felt the jar as that thing hit. And then blam, one hits us up in the motor area. We didn't take time to hear the rest of them. We just yelled at once, get out. They all went over. I went over. Since I was a radio man, in those days I had a harness that came over my helmet with a little plug right like this. And I forgot I had that on. So when I leaped over the side there, it almost took my head off, I'm still hooked to the radio. Kind of discombobulated me there. And I fell into the wreckage of this wagon, and one of the little splinters of the lumber caught me just above the boot and went right up my pant leg. And I'm caught there. And so I'm a nailed down target, and that 20 millimeter gunner was trying to hit me. I got loose, I ran around behind the half track in order to keep it between me and him. Well, so he just punched more holes in the half track. And then I ran back down the street. And as I was running, I'd always try to keep that half track between me and him, but when I would veer out, boom, here it goes, 1 millimeter. Finally, I made a run across the street to there's a very big stone house, and that'd be protection. I went in, and the gunner decided to just shoot up the house because the 20 millimeter would go through the walls of that thing, so he just punched some holes in it, just odd chance of getting me. I went out to the other side of the house. And suddenly, I'm in an area with bright sunshine, and I'm out of war. And I thought, I've done my fighting for today. I'm just going to sit here, calm down, and get some beef. I was carrying a K-ration in one of my pockets. During this period of time, we worked up a teamwork kind of thing with the Air Force. And we had in one of our tanks an Air Force officer as liaison. And our commanders would talk to him. We talked about the situation, what's out there and what's holding us up. And here would come, it was always a flight of 8. P-47s. They would circle above us, and they'd talk back and forth till they got the situation, and they'd look it over, then they'd make their runs. So I was accustomed to hearing single-engine planes of those fighter bombers up there. So while I'm sitting there, I hear one, and I looked up, and he's coming down, and I thought, that guy has lost control of that plane. So I looked up at it, and instantly I realized my mistake. It was not a P-47, it was a Focke-Wulf 190. You're done. You can't outrun an airplane. You know? And I, as far as I could see to the right or left, I was the only guy visible.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm it. Coming right on me. I didn't jump out and do anything. You're dead. You're just dead. He did have a bomb. He did release the bomb, but he wasn't aiming at me. He was aiming at the house across the street. He hit it. There was a 500-pound bomb. It just makes a terrible thing, and it destroys even a stone house. I mean, it just ruins it. Blows timbers and bricks everywhere. He hit that. Well, I told this story at one of our association reunions. And Ed Gebinger said, well, let me tell you the part 2 of that story. Ed Gebinger's my good buddy. He was in the 1st platoon, I was in 2nd. He said, I heard that airplane coming. He didn't see it, he just heard it. He didn't even take time to look. And he was at that house across the street. He just made a dive for the basement. And I guess he got to the basement about the time that bomb hit the other end of the house and blew him back up the stairwell. Jeez. And knocked him out, gave him a concussion. And part of the wreckage of the house fell on him, and I think his feet were sticking out. And so after the smoke all cleared and the dust and all, the guys looked and there's this wreckage and here's this. We didn't mess with the dead. Other people are designated to do that. You're in battle, attend to the battle. So they just said, Gebinger bought it. I mean, that's it. And they walked off and left it. And then when he finally came to, he had to struggle out from underneath that all by himself. Okay, so in subsequent reunions, I tell this as a 2-part story. I told it one time, and then Harold Wren, who was had formerly been in my squad, said, let me tell you part 3. No. And part 3 is that after the lieutenant had jumped out of our half-track and ran back into town, he did find the rest of the platoon, or the other 4 vehicles. And he ran up to the first one, he yanked open the door of the passenger side, jumped in, and yelled at the driver, go! The guy roared the motor, popped the clutch, and the thing jerked forward. There was a .30 caliber machine gun over here on this left side of the half track, and it had been in firing. When the thing jumped forward like that, the gun swiveled around somehow or another, and on those machine guns, the trigger, it has a pistol grip here in back, and the trigger sits down in front of that, but there's no trigger guard. And that thing swung around, and the trigger hit something, a strap or something, bang, and it tripped off one shot. The bullet hit a piece of metal in the half track, glanced, and hit the lieutenant in the finger and very nearly tore it off. And he wasn't, he didn't have a very good standing with the company commander. And he said, my goodness, what am I going to do now? And Harold said, well, if I had a wound like that, I'd go back to the hospital. He said, I can't do that. Captain, how can I explain that to Captain? But at any rate, he did go. He was never returned to the company. One time at one of our reunions after the war, one of our colonels survived. He decided to fill out his 30 years thing for retirement. He was sent up to Alaska. So he's up there, and this is 3 or 4 years after the war's over, see. In came this same guy, the same second lieutenant, and he was still a second lieutenant.
Our engine broke down, so we were drifting on the Baltic Sea, and the German submarine sank the boat, but he rescued us before they sank the boat. So.
No kidding.
And of course, then they took us to Germany, and we were in the post-slavery camps. So that's how we ended up in Germany, and I was there 7 years. I'm a survivor. That's really great. Going through everything.
Who overran the camp and liberated you? Do you remember?
They were Americans.
You wouldn't know the unit?
No, I wouldn't know anything because we were so starved and didn't know anything like that. I was 12 years old. So.
12 years old.
Yeah. And so I didn't know anything. But anyway, that area was given to Russians. So my mom and I, we got one of those little wagons, had food, a few things we had. We put it that, and we walked across Germany all the way to border of France, where we couldn't get in, just to get away from the Russians. So. And of course, when we got to the English zone, you know, they would not accept anybody that was not there when actually the occupation took place. So we were shipped over to the English. So we stayed in the English sector. And I went to school there, high school. And, yeah. So anyway.
Have you been back to Estonia?
Yes, twice.
Twice.
Yeah, once it got free again.
The first one, I don't know the name of it. And it was west of the Rhine. I do know it was near a town called Galdersheim.
Yeah.
We're under General George Patton's command at the time. You may have heard.
Yes.
Moving very rapidly. And we were given no word at all that this morning you will bump into those. It's just that suddenly we're roaring through the gates of this concentration camp. The guards had fled. And of course the prisoners all swarmed around us. They looked as if they were nearly starving. And so we stopped. We carried food. So we just pitched these out to the people were Polish, which surprised me.
Yeah.
And the reason we knew it is because one of my buddies was of Polish ancestry. And so immediately he could talk to me. But I don't know the name of the camp. But then later, way down in southern Germany, of Landsberg, it's a satellite of Dachau. And if you go to the Holocaust Museum, Washington, D.C. isn't it? You go there with the flags of various divisions, and the ones that liberated a particular camp, there will be the division flag and the name of the camp they liberated. And for my division, the 12th Armored, it was Landsberg. That first camp where we overran Galdersheim, when these prisoners swarmed around our half-tracks, everything came to a stop because there's a crowd of people there. But on the radio, our officers were yelling at us, "Don't stop, keep moving. Get the guards that were on this place."
Yeah, but they were long gone.
They were long gone. We never did catch them.
Yeah, the same happened in ours. They left, and we were separated by a fence. There was the Polish and Russians were on the other side of the fence, and the Baltic nations, the three Latvians and Estonians, we were on one side of the fence.
Is that right?
Yeah, so they separated, and we had no Jews in our area.
No Jews in our area?
No.
Do you know where the town of Rothenburg is? It's a walled city, a medieval city. But in modern warfare, it wasn't of strategic importance.
Right.
We fought around it. The roads going around was the important thing. Now, this was on April the 12th, 1945. We had been fighting and moving very rapidly. We had been up at Würzburg. Then President made an agreement with the Russians not to go on in. You probably know
Yeah,
this.
Estonia was sold down there.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
great.
we weren't going to go over there.
That's when we left Plauen area
Yeah.
and started our trek across Germany to get away.
They didn't, I guess his agreement was we won't go into Czechoslovakia and that area. So all right, we turned south. And we just traveled and fought every day. We got to a little town of Rutgers. And the head of the column was a mile or two further on. And the Germans had artillery guns set so that whenever they fired, their shells would land right on the road. So they've been waiting for us to. So as soon as we're strung out, straddling that little crossroads place, they let go. The first shell hits between my half track and one in front. We couldn't move forward, and they didn't want us to go off the road because the road, it was very marshy over there, and they were afraid that we'd get bogged down. So they yelled for us just to get out, scatter, and get away from the shell. I jumped out,
starting to feel like it's my nap.
and my buddies did too. And this was about their second day in combat, and they didn't know what to do. And they'd huddled up against a little building, which would be no protection at all from the shells. So we stopped in the street and yelled at them until we got their attention for them to come, because we spotted a big stone house. The big stone houses have basements.
Yes.
So they started to come with us, and as I turned and started to run, the one shell came too close. What it felt like was that I thought a rock hit me. It knocked my arm around like this, and the rifle went skidding down the road. I had to grab my arm like this. And running alongside me was a medical aid man. You talk about luck.
Oh, yes.
We ran to the first big stone house. We went in. The medical aid man said, "Let's look at that." And then I saw this.
Oh, yeah, that's nice.
It splintered the bone.
Oh,
But I saw the bone sticking out like that and the blood welling out. I thought I've lost an arm. But he put a compress on it, tightened it down to stop the bleeding, because you're going to bleed to death right away if you don't. And then he tagged me the time of what they'd done. And then he said, "Do you want some morphine?" And I said, "That all depends what's going to happen to me." He consulted a radio man. The column's going to go on. We're going to leave you alongside the road. If you're going to be alone in enemy territory, I don't want to have morphine in me. I want to be alert. So I didn't take any morphine. 15 minutes later, sure enough, there was an ambulance. And the aid man inside there said, "Now, do you want some morphine?" I said, "Yes, I do."
okay.
The ambulance was full. There were 4 of us sitting on this side. Next to me was a lieutenant who'd had this finger shot off. Next was a fellow, he was shot in the ankle. And then there was a small Polish boy who had both arms in bandages. Over on this side were 2 stretchers, because the guys there were very badly wounded. One of them with bad wounds to his face and head. The other one was, his chest was really, in fact, the guy with the bad chest wounds died that day. We traveled all day long with the fighting column, because we learned that the Germans had closed in behind us. We couldn't go back to the hospital. So all day long, we're traveling with the fighting unit. Along about the middle of the afternoon, I noticed that once in a while we would stop very suddenly, and the driver and the medical aid man would get out and get in the ditch.
And you were sitting in the back?
I'm sitting in the back. They had heard the reports that the Luftwaffe was strafing the convoy.
Oh.
So they would get out, but they didn't figure that we wounded could be mobile enough to do that, so they didn't say anything. They just got out and